Welcome to Stories of HFY, your ultimate destination for thrills, adventure, and entertainment. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell to join us on this epic journey. Let's create unforgettable moments together.
The crystalline display panels in the Galactic Military Academy's Grand Observatory buzzed with anticipation as 300 spectators from 17 species gathered for the annual siege assessment trials. Holographic banners rippled overhead, displaying the time-honored record, 6 hours, 23 minutes, 12 seconds, unbroken for a century. Cadet Sarah Chin slouched in her seat, chewing on her stylus as she studied the fortress schematics floating above her datapad. The other cadets, an assortment of beings from high-gravity worlds to gas giants, maintained their perfect postures, antennae twitching and photoreceptors dilating as Instructor Zex, for 27 glided onto the presentation platform. Another cycle, another batch of hopefuls. Zex's voice resonated through the chamber, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with each word. For those newly arrived at our prestigious institution, the impenetrable fortress simulation stands as the paramount test of siege warfare expertise. 100 years of the galaxy's finest tactical minds have attempted to breach its defenses. None have managed it in under 6 hours. Sarah's hand shot up, earning disapproving clicks from her arachnid classmates. Their mandibles shifted in what she'd learned was their equivalent of an eye roll. Yes, Cadet Chin? Zex's voice carried a hint of resignation. The human had developed a reputation for disrupting lectures with what the instructor termed primitive perspectives. Sir, request permission to attempt the simulation with my squad. A wave of chittering laughter swept through the observatory. Even the normally stoic Vulcanids leaked atmosphere from their filter vents in amusement. Cadet Chin, Zex's bioluminescence shifted to deep indigo, a sign of either irritation or indigestion. Sarah could never tell which. You are a first-year student. The simulation is typically reserved for graduating classes. With respect, sir, the regulations state any cadet squad may attempt the trial during assessment day. There's no rank requirement. Sarah stood, her earth-born frame towering over most of her seated classmates. Unless you're concerned about human participation? The chamber fell silent. Challenging an instructor's species bias was considered either brave or suicidal, depending on one's homeworld customs. Zex's outer membrane rippled, a clear sign of internal conflict. Very well, they finally responded. Assemble your team. You have 1 standard hour to prepare. Sarah grinned as she gathered her equipment. Her squad mate, Crix Tlar, hurried over, his crystalline exoskeleton clicking anxiously against the deck plates. Have you lost your neural functions? Crix whispered, his translator struggling to convey his distress. That fortress was designed by the combined minds of Arcturus. It has quantum-lock barriers, temporal defense grids, and psychic dampening fields. It also has corners, Sarah replied, stuffing her ancient paper notebook into her kit bag. Her squadmates exchanged confused glances. Corners? Ptak, their energy-based tactical specialist, flickered in bewilderment. What tactical significance do geometric intersections hold? You'll see. Sarah checked her chronometer. Meet me in Simulation Chamber 3 in 20 minutes. And bring climbing gear. Climbing gear? Crix's crystalline face fractured into patterns of confusion. The fortress has anti-gravity barriers. Exactly. Sarah patted his shoulder, earning a crystalline chime of surprise. They'll be expecting everyone to try going over or under. Nobody expects someone to just climb up the old-fashioned way. As her squadmates departed, still buzzing with confusion, Sarah overheard 2 instructors speaking in the corridor. A human attempting the fortress, one gurgled. They barely understand quantum mechanics. Indeed, the other replied, their tentacles twisting in amusement. But let them try. Perhaps failure will teach them humility. Sarah's grin widened as she pulled up the fortress schematics again. After all, humans hadn't survived on Earth by understanding quantum mechanics. They'd survived by understanding something far more important, the art of using whatever worked, no matter how primitive it seemed. In the preparation chamber, she began laying out her plan to her increasingly skeptical team. The timer above the simulation room entrance counted down mercilessly, 47 minutes until they would either make history or become a cautionary tale in the Academy's records. Either way, Sarah thought as she sketched crude diagrams of ancient siege engines, the aliens were about to learn why humans had been classified as Deathworlders. Sometimes the most dangerous creatures weren't the ones with the most advanced technology. They were the ones who remembered how to use sticks and stones when the quantum batteries ran dry. The preparation chamber hummed with nervous energy as Sarah spread the holographic blueprints across the tactical table. Her fingers traced the geometric patterns of the fortress's defensive systems, while her mind wandered to childhood memories of Earth's ancient ruins. These energy matrices, she murmured, zooming in on a particularly complex node. They're arranged in a perfect dodecahedron pattern. Beautiful, elegant, and exactly like the load-bearing arches in Byzantine architecture. Crix's crystalline form refracted light in patterns of confusion. The significance escapes me, Chin. What do extinct Earth structures have to do with breaking a quantum-locked fortress? Sarah's eyes gleamed with the intensity that her squad mates had learned to both fear and respect. My parents were archaeological engineers. Spent my childhood summers helping them map forgotten castles and buried cities. Every civilization, no matter how advanced, builds on basic geometric principles. They can't help it. It's like the universe has a favorite shape. Tak pulsed skeptically, their energy form condensing into a more focused configuration. The combined minds of Arcturus would never base their designs on primitive architectural principles. That's exactly what makes their design vulnerable. Sarah pulled up an ancient image from her personal database, a weathered castle on a cliff face. Look familiar? Her squadmates leaned forward, their various sensory organs processing the image. The resemblance between the ancient Earth fortress and the simulation's quantum castle was unmistakable. Impossible, Crix whispered, his crystalline surface rippling with surprise. Not impossible. Inevitable. Sarah overlaid the ancient blueprints with the simulation schematics. The Arcturians designed the perfect fortress using advanced mathematics. But mathematics always leads back to the same fundamental forms. They accidentally recreated a medieval castle, just with fancier materials. She reached into her kit bag and withdrew something that made her alien squadmates recoil in confusion. A crude model made of sticks and string. What primitive device is that? Tak's energy field fluctuated with curiosity. This, Sarah grinned, is a trebuchet. Humans used them to break castle walls for centuries. The physics haven't changed. We're just going to upgrade it with a few modern touches. Her fingers danced over the tactical table's controls, bringing up material strength calculations and gravitational force equations. The fortress's quantum shields are calibrated to stop energy weapons and matter phase attacks. But they never considered someone might just throw a really big rock at them. A rock? Crix's crystalline structure nearly shattered from shock. We're going to attack the most sophisticated defensive system in the galaxy with minerals. Not just any rocks. Sarah pulled up the specs for the simulation's environment. We're going to use their own defensive debris against them. Those floating asteroid fragments they keep as a perimeter? Perfect ammunition. We just need to calculate the right trajectories. The memory of her father's voice echoed in her mind as she worked. Remember, butterfly, every wall has a weakness. The stronger they make it, the more they have to rely on fundamental principles. And fundamental principles can always be turned against themselves. Her squadmates watched in fascination as she sketched out the attack plan. It was elegantly simple. Use modified gravity manipulators to create a medieval siege engine, configure their personal shields into a Roman tortoise formation, and exploit the structural weaknesses that had plagued castle architects for millennia. This is madness, Crix declared, but his voice carried an undercurrent of excitement. Brilliant madness. That's humanity in a nutshell, Sarah replied, making final adjustments to her calculations. We never forgot our climbing gear while inventing spaceships. Speaking of which, Tak, how's your aim with gravitational sling theory? The energy being pulsed with pride. Top of my class in particle trajectory mathematics. Perfect. You're our trebuchet operator. Crix, your crystalline structure makes you ideal for the shield formation's cornerstone. And I'll handle the climbing. Those quantum-locked walls won't expect good old-fashioned pitons and rope. As her squadmates began practicing their roles, Sarah's hand brushed against the worn leather notebook in her pocket, her mother's journal from their last excavation together. Inside were detailed sketches of castle weak points, siege tactics, and the accumulated wisdom of countless human warriors who had faced impregnable walls. Time check, she announced, studying the countdown display. 20 minutes until we make history, or become a laughingstock. Query. Tak's form sparkled with curiosity. Why do humans persist in using outdated methods when superior technology exists? Sarah paused, considering the question. Because sometimes the old ways work best. Technology can fail, but gravity? Gravity never forgets how to pull things down. She rolled up the blueprints, her mind already racing through the sequence of actions they'd need to perfect. Besides, the most dangerous weapon isn't the most advanced one. It's the one your enemy doesn't expect you to use. Red warning lights bathed the simulation chamber in a crimson glow as the massive fortress materialized before them. Hovering debris fields shimmered with quantum-locked barriers, and temporal defense grids crackled with purple lightning. In the observation deck above, hundreds of alien spectators pressed against the crystalline windows, eager to witness what they assumed would be a spectacular failure. Initialize siege parameters. Instructor Zex 427's voice echoed through the chamber. Countdown commencing. 3, 2, 1. The moment the simulation went live, Sarah's team sprang into action, but not in the expected direction. Instead of engaging the quantum barriers or attempting to breach the temporal fields, they sprinted toward the debris field. Are they retreating already? Someone in the observation deck snickered. Vtak's energy form pulsed rapidly as they interfaced with their modified gravity manipulator. The device, hastily reconfigured to Sarah's specifications, looked more like an ancient war machine than a piece of advanced technology. Crystalline power cores hummed as they aligned with the largest fragments in the debris field. Trajectory calculated, Vtak announced, their voice crackling with excitement. Applying gravitational torsion in 3, 2, 1. The makeshift trebuchet roared to life. A massive asteroid fragment, perfectly selected for its density and shape, arced through space. The quantum barriers, calibrated to deflect energy weapons and matter phase attacks, registered the simple projectile as harmless debris. It sailed through unimpeded. Boom! The impact shook the entire simulation. Spiderweb cracks appeared in the fortress's outer wall, not from the force of the blow alone, but from the precise targeting of its architectural weak point. Sarah's childhood lessons echoed in her mind. Every castle has the same vulnerable spots, butterfly. The corners where weight distribution meets. They never change. Impossible, an instructor shouted from above. The barriers should have. Second volley. Sarah commanded, cutting off the protests. Vtak's energy form blazed as they launched another precisely calculated strike. Meanwhile, Crix led the second phase of their assault. His crystalline structure refracted and amplified their shield generators, creating an overlapping pattern identical to the ancient Roman tortoise formation. Under this protection, they advanced toward the breach, ignoring the increasingly frantic defensive systems. The temporal grid is adapting, Crix warned as lightning crackled around their shield formation. We have perhaps 2 minutes before it recalibrates. More than enough time, Sarah grinned, pulling out her primitive climbing gear. The quantum-locked walls hummed with energy, but their surface remained just solid enough for her magnetic pitons to find purchase. As she began her ascent, the observation deck erupted in chaos. No one had ever considered physically climbing the walls, not when anti-gravity technology existed. The defense systems, programmed to counter every known form of advanced assault, ignored her completely. Chun! Instructor Zex's voice carried a note of panic. This is not an approved approach to the simulation. No rule against it, though. Sarah called back, jamming another piton into a microscopic crack. Below her, Vtak continued their bombardment, keeping the defensive systems occupied with their improvised siege engine. Crix's shield formation protected their position, the crystalline harmonics of his structure actually absorbing and redirecting the temporal grid's energy. Reaching the upper battlements, Sarah encountered the fortress's final defense, a psychic dampening field designed to disorient and confuse attackers. She laughed, pulling out a simple mechanical compass from her pocket. Sometimes the old ways are best, she muttered, using the device to navigate through the psychic haze. The actual control center lay right where she'd predicted, in the equivalent of a medieval keep's highest tower. The final door, triple reinforced with quantum locks and temporal seals, loomed before her. Sarah reached into her kit and pulled out her last surprise, a small jar of ordinary sand. What primitive substance is that? A voice demanded from the observation deck. Silicon dioxide, Sarah replied cheerfully, sprinkling it over the door's intricate locking mechanism. Turns out super advanced quantum locks don't work so well when there's good old-fashioned grit in the gears. The door's mechanisms whirred, sparked, and failed. With a simple push, it swung open. Simulation core accessed, the automated system announced. Time elapsed, 17 minutes, 42 seconds. New record established. Silence fell over the chamber. Sarah stood in the doorway, covered in sweat and grinning triumphantly, while her squad mates maintained their positions below. Above them, hundreds of alien observers struggled to process what they'd just witnessed. Instructor Zek's 427's bioluminescent patches had turned pure white, a sign of complete astonishment. What? This is pretty good for a bunch of primitives, huh? Sarah called out, twirling her climbing rope. Sometimes you don't need to outthink your enemy. You just need to think differently. The simulation chamber's lighting returned to normal, casting harsh illumination on a scene that would rewrite Galactic Military Academy textbooks. The holographic numbers hung in the air, glowing defiantly, 1742. Below them, Instructor Zek's 427's datapad clattered to the floor, its sound echoing through the stunned silence. Display malfunction, someone whispered from the observation deck. Must be a glitch in the timing system. No malfunction, Talk declared, their energy forms still pulsing with excitement. Our trebuchet logs confirm the duration. 17 minutes and 42 seconds from start to completion. Sarah descended from the fortress's summit using her climbing rope, each step punctuated by the soft magnetic release of her pitons. The primitive technology that had drawn snickers now commanded a different kind of attention. Hundreds of alien eyes, optical sensors, and sensory organs tracked her movement. Impossible, muttered a senior instructor, their tentacles twisted into knots of disbelief. The quantum matrices alone should have. Should have what? Sarah landed with a soft thud beside her teammates. Should have stopped energy weapons? Phase-shifted matter? Advanced technological approaches? She patted her climbing harness. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. We just didn't use any of those things. Crix's crystalline form still hummed with residual energy from the shield formation. Query for the instructors. Has anyone ever attempted a physical assault on the fortress before? The silence that followed answered more eloquently than words could have. That's the problem with advanced civilizations, Sarah explained, brushing simulation dust from her uniform. You get so caught up in quantum this and temporal that you forget the basics. Every structure, no matter how sophisticated, still follows fundamental physical laws. Instructor Zek's 427 finally recovered enough to approach the team. Their bioluminescent patches cycled through colors so rapidly it looked like a malfunctioning light show. Cadet Chin, your methods were unorthodox. Thank you, sir. That wasn't necessarily a compliment. I'll take it as one anyway. Sarah grinned, pulling out her mother's worn notebook. Would you like to see how we did it? I have some lovely diagrams of 12th century siege engines. The observatory erupted in a cacophony of voices, clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses as the implications sank in. A century of tactical doctrine, shattered by technology that predated space flight. The impenetrable fortress, defeated by the equivalent of sticks and stones. The combined minds of Arcturus will need to be notified, an administrator announced, their cybernetic implants whirring with distress. The simulation parameters must be updated. Updated? Sarah raised an eyebrow. You mean you'll add defenses against physical attacks? That's missing the point entirely. She stepped onto the tactical display platform, bringing up a split-screen view of their assault alongside traditional siege methods. The lesson here isn't about plugging holes in the defense. It's about perspective. The holograms danced as she explained, showing the similarities between their modified gravity trebuchet and its ancient counterpart, between Crix's crystalline shield formation and Roman testudo tactics. Every species in this room has a history, she continued. Before you had quantum locks, before you mastered temporal fields, you all had your own version of the trebuchet, your own climbing tools, your own simple, effective solutions to complex problems. Talk floated forward, their energy pattern forming the mathematical equations they'd used. The gravitational calculations were based on classical physics. No quantum uncertainty, no temporal variables, pure, simple trajectory mathematics. Crix's crystalline surface caught the light as he added, and our shield formation succeeded because it followed basic geometric principles. The same principles that have worked for countless species across countless worlds. The chamber had grown quiet again, but this time with a different quality. Not shock or disbelief, but contemplation. Instructor Zek's 427's bioluminescence finally settled into a steady blue glow, a sign of acceptance, or perhaps resignation. Cadet Chin, your squad has redefined our understanding of tactical approaches. The Academy's curriculum will need significant revision. Just add a history class, Sarah suggested, tucking her mother's notebook away. Sometimes the best way forward is to look back. The observation deck began to clear as officials hurried off to file reports and update databases. But a few cadets lingered, their eyes fixed on Sarah's simple climbing gear with newfound respect. "Chun," one of them called down, their insectoid mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Would you show us how to tie those knots?" Sarah's smile widened. "Bring some rope to the training hall tomorrow. I'll teach you everything my parents taught me about scaling impossible walls." As her team packed up their modified equipment, Crix turned his crystalline face toward her. "Query, do all humans think like this?" "Like what?" "Sideways. Backward. Using old solutions for new problems." Sarah thought about Earth, about its long history of creatures adapting to survive against impossible odds. About humans who had faced each new challenge by reaching into their past for answers. "We had to," she replied simply. "Earth doesn't let you survive by doing things the easy way. Sometimes you need quantum physics. And sometimes you just need a really big rock." News spread through the Galactic Military Academy faster than a quantum transmission. Within hours, every student, instructor, and administrative AI knew about the humans who had conquered the unconquerable. Holographic recordings of the 17-minute siege played on loop in common areas, drawing crowds of fascinated observers from all species. Sarah found herself ambushed by questions between classes. "Is it true you used silicon particles to disable quantum locks? How did you calculate the trebuchet trajectories without quantum computers? Were those really just pieces of rope holding you up?" The Academy's central library, usually a quiet sanctuary of digital knowledge, now buzzed with activity. Cadets huddled around ancient military texts from Earth, studying diagrams of Roman formations and medieval siege engines with the same intensity they once reserved for quantum theory. "Attention all personnel," the Academy's AI announced one morning. "Curriculum update in progress. New mandatory course added, Historical Military Innovation, Learning from the Past. Primary Instructor, Cadet Sarah Chin." Sarah nearly choked on her breakfast. Crix's crystalline form chimed with amusement beside her. "Congratulations, Professor," he teased, his structure refracting morning light into rainbow patterns. "Though I suggest starting with knot tying basics. Some species here still struggle with the concept of string." The Academy's modification of her status from student to instructor came with an upgraded quarters, a spacious room overlooking the station's curve. Sarah transformed one wall into a display of Earth's military history, from stone axes to space shuttles. Each weapon, tool, and tactic told a story of survival. Her first class filled the largest lecture hall. Species that normally avoided each other sat side by side, united by curiosity. Even some instructors slipped in, trying to look casual about learning from a former student. "Welcome to Historical Military Innovation," Sarah began, activating a hologram of Earth. "Today's lesson, why simplicity succeeds. Can anyone tell me what this is?" She held up a simple lever. The room filled with confused murmurs. A tentacled being in the front row raised an appendage. An inefficient way to move objects without anti-gravity? "This," Sarah smiled, "is how humans built pyramids, launched spaceships, and survived on a planet that tried to kill us daily. Sometimes the simplest solution is the strongest, because it can't break." Her reputation grew beyond the Academy. The Galactic Defense Council requested her input on fortification designs. Alien archaeologists began studying their own species' ancient warfare techniques, seeking forgotten wisdom. One evening, as Sarah reviewed student assignments in her quarters, Instructor Zex, for 27 visited. Their bioluminescent patches glowed a thoughtful green. "The Academy Board has been discussing your methods," they announced, settling into a specially designed chair. "Some suggest we've become too dependent on advanced technology. Others fear studying primitive warfare might lead to unpredictable results." "Let me guess," Sarah leaned back. "You're worried more students will start throwing rocks at quantum barriers?" "Precisely." Zex's patches flickered. "Though I admit, watching the arthropodian cadets attempt to recreate your climbing technique has been entertaining." Sarah gestured to her wall of history. "Every tool here, from the spear to the fusion drive, solved a specific problem. Understanding their progression helps us think flexibly. That's what Earth taught us, adapt or die. Your planet sounds terrifying." "It is, but it made us stronger." Sarah picked up a simple compass. "This guided ships across oceans before computers existed. Still works during solar flares too. Zex absorbed this, their colors shifting thoughtfully. The board also approved your proposal for practical exercises, though I still question the wisdom of teaching zero-gravity archery. Wait until you see what we can do with a catapult in space, Sarah grinned. The academy changed in subtle ways over the following months. Engineering students began studying ancient mechanisms alongside quantum physics. Combat training incorporated both high-tech simulations and basic hand-to-hand techniques. Every species discovered something valuable in their ancestral past. Sarah's favorite moment came during the end-of-term demonstrations. A team of gaseous beings, who normally relied purely on energy manipulation, successfully constructed and operated a mechanical ballista. They'd adapted the design to work with their non-solid forms, proving that old ideas could evolve in new ways. Query, Crix asked one day, watching students practice with both plasma rifles and recurve bows. Do you think we've gone too far backward? Sarah shook her head, observing a Vulcanid cadet, showing an arachnid how to tie a bowline knot. We haven't gone backward, we've expanded our options. The best fighter isn't the one with the fanciest weapon. It's the one who can use anything as a weapon. The Academy's new motto appeared on banners throughout the station: honor the past, innovate the future. Below it, in smaller text, and always check for climbing points. Sarah smiled every time she saw it. Somewhere on Earth, in the ruins of ancient fortresses, her parents were probably laughing too. Their daughter had taught the galaxy that sometimes the old ways were the best ways, especially when nobody expected them. Years after that fateful siege simulation, Sarah stood at the Academy's graduation podium, addressing a new generation of officers. The Great Hall sparkled with the diverse forms of cadets from across the galaxy, crystalline beings shimmering next to energy forms, while insectoid species clicked mandibles in excitement. When I first arrived here, she began, everyone called humans Deathworlders. They meant it as a warning label, a way of saying we were dangerous, unpredictable, primitive. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the audience. They were right about the dangerous part. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Several cadets wore the new insignia she'd designed, a trebuchet silhouetted against a star field. But what makes humans dangerous isn't our strength, or our endurance, or even our creativity. It's our memory. We remember every step of our journey from caves to stars. Every solution, every failure, every lesson learned the hard way. Behind her, a holographic display showed scenes from her famous siege victory, alongside images of cadets mastering both ancient and modern techniques. Look around this room. 5 years ago, most of you couldn't tie a knot. Now I've seen gaseous collective members rigging pulleys in zero-G crystalline species, adapting Roman shield walls to enhance their natural structures. Energy beings calculating ballistic trajectories without quantum computers. Crix, now an advanced combat instructor himself, chimed from his position near the stage. His crystalline form had grown more complex, incorporating patterns inspired by human fortress designs. You're not just warriors of the future, Sarah continued. You're inheritors of every clever solution your ancestors ever devised. Never let anyone tell you that old means obsolete, or that primitive means worthless. She held up her mother's notebook, its leather cover worn smooth by years of use. This contains siege techniques from Earth's medieval period. It helped break an unbreakable fortress. Not because the techniques were superior, but because they were unexpected. That's your real lesson from the Academy. Never stop learning, never stop adapting, and never forget where you came from. The Academy's satellite campus on Earth had opened last month, allowing alien cadets to study historical warfare in its original context. Sarah had laughed when she saw Vulcanids practicing archery in the rain, and arachnids learning to build siege towers with their silk. Remember, she concluded, the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy isn't a quantum cannon or a temporal disruptor. It's the mind that can use both or neither, and still complete the mission. Class of 2492, you are that weapon. Use your knowledge wisely, honor both past and future, and never underestimate a solution just because it's simple. As the graduation ceremonies concluded, Sarah watched her students disperse to their new assignments. Some would guard quantum gates with plasma rifles and backup crossbows. Others would design fortifications that combined ancient wisdom with modern technology. All of them would carry forward the lesson that had shattered a 100-year record. There is no such thing as obsolete knowledge. In her office later, she added a final note to her teaching records. Humans didn't become Deathworlders by forgetting our past. We survived because we remembered it. Now the galaxy remembers with us. The future of warfare isn't about choosing between old and new. It's about knowing when to use each. And maybe, just maybe, about keeping a few pieces of rope handy. Just in case. The end. Postscript. The impenetrable fortress simulation now includes defenses against physical climbing, trebuchets, and silicon particles. Current record, 5 hours, 47 minutes. Holder, a team of arachnid cadets who somehow managed to weave a web through quantum space. Investigation pending.